Holy shit! Let's fucking go, Minoxa, lo hiciste. Literalmente chequeo YouTube y me sale este masterpiece. Llevo esperando un montón de tiempo para querer reaccionar a este video. Yo sé que no he reaccionado a los videos así en un video en YouTube, pero yo siento que este es demasiado especial que realmente necesito hacerle una reacción. Honestamente no hago una video reacción desde uno de los teaser trailers de FNAF Plus, pero bueno, ya saben cómo quedó eso atrás. Así que nada, quiero reaccionar esto así en full video y quiero dar mis propias explicaciones porque my god, estoy super hype para ver esto. Ok, let's go. ¡Let's go! El primer segundo que le doy play a esto y ya suena una canción de Summoning Soul, es que esto ya va a ser un 10 de 10.
Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most popular game franchises of the past decade. Although it's a series generally known for its horror, the custom nights allowed for a more difficult experience, and this attracted a small portion of the community to dedicate themselves to pushing these games to their absolute limits. I've already made 2 videos on this topic, but now there's only one game left to talk about. It was harder than any Five Nights at Freddy's game that came before it. After the game came out, it wasn't long before everyone started asking the same question. Who was gonna beat the hardest challenge first? This is the quest to perfect Ultimate Custom Night.
The quest to perfect Ultimate Custom Night. Me fascina. Raiden, True Player Shooter, Insta y Daryl. Excelente. Está bien. Oh, es deluxe. Este es Hopeless Pursuit. Este es Hopeless Pursuit. Este es Hopeless Pursuit. Oh shit. An intro to UCN. Vale.
Our story begins in February 2018, a few months after the release of Pizzeria Simulator. In a Steam forum post, the game's developer, Scott Cawthon, stated that he was developing an Ultimate Custom Night add-on for Pizzeria Simulator, a game that had no custom night on its own. He used his website, scottgames.com, to tease many aspects of the game, which is where we found out the default roster would consist of 50 characters. He also used his website as a sort of progress meter to showcase how much of the development was completed. He quickly realized the scope of the project was far too large to relegate it to an add-on for an existing game, and thus, Ultimate Custom Night became a standalone title. After a few months, the game was ready to be released on June 22nd, but was delayed. This is because Scott had agreed to not release the game until a certain FNAF YouTuber got back home from his vacation. So, on the 27th, the game was finally released. As you might expect, the concept of dealing with 50 different characters at the same time is pretty mind-boggling. Unlike challenges from previous games, this one would be a lot more complicated and significantly more demanding. Five Nights at Freddy's, at its core, is a game series built on resource management, and Ultimate Custom Night is no different. To start, there's many things that need to be passively managed, like the power, the temperature in your office, your noise level, and the ventilation. There's also a menu on your monitor that allows you to supplement these resources with the power generator, the silent ventilation, the heater, the power AC, and the global music box, which can all be accessed through keybinds of the numbers 1 through 6. Only one of these systems can be active at a time, though, so it's important to choose which one is most appropriate to use at any given time. The monitor also has a reset ventilation button below the list of all these systems, which does exactly what it sounds like. Every so often, the room will start to fade to black, and if you don't want that to happen, you'll have to open the camera to reset your ventilation. On the topic of the monitor, there are 3 separate monitoring systems that need to be accounted for: the cameras, the vents, and the ducts. Each of these systems have their own animatronics and unique mechanics that must be dealt with. On top of all this, the office itself has quite a few things that need to be managed, such as the 4 doors and a plethora of animatronic-specific mechanics. There's also a currency system, Faz coins, which you receive every time an animatronic bangs on a door you've closed, and they can also be found on the cameras. Finally, the nights last exactly 4.5 minutes, and there are a few power-ups that you can get from playing the game to make your life a little bit easier. But a lot of the time, people would opt to not use them because you'd have to go back to the menu to turn them on, and ultimately they usually weren't that useful.
A mí me da gracia como hay todavía personas que ponen en los títulos 50-20 completed, no power-ups, como si fuera como la cosa más llamativa de la historia. O sea, anteriormente si tú no utilizabas ningún power-up era como la cosa más cabrona de la historia, pero ahora puedes hacerte literalmente un 20% en UCN. Todavía me sigue dando gracia que últimamente hay personas que todavía ponen 50-20 no power-ups. Oh my god, qué cabrón, like, no sé.
The game also has a scoring system that assigns 10 points per one AI level added to the night. So with 50 animatronics at a value of 20, this makes the maximum possible score 10,000. Obviously, this challenge is so hard that brute forcing it would just not work at all. In order to ease into it, people opted to learn the game in parts, by learning animatronic mechanics in groups. From there, as people figured out the game, they would start to work their way up to 50-20 by adding more and more of them to the mix. But in order to understand the true difficulty behind this quest, it's inevitable that I'll have to at least give a basic explanation of how every character in this game works.
The race for 50-20.
As I said at the beginning of the video, Five Nights at Freddy's is a very popular game, and that being said, there are countless people who were gunning to be the first victor of 50-20 mode.
Eric
We're gonna
let's go. Mr.
be the first victor. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to be focusing on the first 3 people who managed to beat the challenge.
Remery, Dauko y... Yo pensaba que era DJ Sturf, pero yo creo que había otra persona que se lo había pasado antes que DJ Sturf.
DJ Sturf.
¿Ah? ¿No era que había otra persona que se lo había pasado antes que DJ Sturf? Es que yo creo que el tercer Victor era demasiado underrated. No muchas personas sabían de este tercer Victor se lo había pasado antes que DJ Sturf.
And Remery.
Remery, no Remery. Sepa inglés.
All right, I'm not gonna leave until you put that seatbelt on.
FNAF movie reference.
Yes! Oh my
Sabía que
goodness.
se le había caído.
If you're maintaining your temperature, you don't have to worry so much about Freddy.
Wow,
No,
este video era
That's it.
God.
Yes.
Yo veía cada rato la completion de este.
If
del
you've
10-20,
seen my
no sé por
previous
qué.
2 videos on custom nights, DJ Sturf should be a very familiar name to you, but I feel like I never really introduced him properly. His YouTube channel actually goes back to the very beginning of YouTube, with dozens of
18
DVR
años.
videos from years ago. He started his FNAF career with a pretty impressive for the time 0 deaths run of the entire first FNAF game, including 420 mode. He even did one of the first green runs, completing 420 mode with 13% power remaining, which was the
Sí.
record from 2015 all the way up to 2019. He continued to be on top of FNAF challenges all the way up to the release of Ultimate Custom Night, and just like Dako, he started his journey on launch day. DJ Sturf was a prime candidate for the victory. Would he be up to the task?
Pensaba yo que iban a poner el clip de Dauko de cuando encontró al endoesqueleto de Popeye de Yo, what the fuck is that? I don't care if I die. What the fuck is that? A mí me encanta ese clip, pero ni modo pusieron al paper pause, supongo.
The paper plate!
Ni siquiera se había pasado Fast
What is
Fever en
going
ese
on,
momento.
guys? Dorko back again, and finally, Scott has posted a new teaser
Dauko
on his website, and
es
it says,
una
"Guess who?"
leyenda.
Jesus
Para
Christ,
FNAF.
another teaser! Look at it! It's freaking Chica, guys.
Yo me acuerdo.
Dako started his journey through Five Nights at Freddy's as one of the pillars of early FNAF theory crafting, with videos
pero mira
dating
que
all the way
chiquito
back
se
to
ve.
January 2015. Fast
una
forward to
célula.
3 years later, the entire game's release was delayed just for him. Yeah, that's right, the certain FNAF YouTuber I mentioned at the beginning was this guy.
Sí.
And on the day of the
Ayer.
game's release, he was live on YouTube and locked in for the grind of his life.
Hola, buenas. Y luego remería una persona random ahí que diga, ¿sabes que me quiero pasar el 50-20?
Finally, we've got Remary, who's sort of a wild card in this whole discussion. She isn't a famous FNAF YouTuber or someone who is already well known for being skilled in FNAF challenges. Her online presence before playing Ultimate Custom Night, as far as I can find, was just making music. Looking at just the uploads, you wouldn't be able to tell this channel had anything to do with Five Nights at Freddy's at any point in time. If we take a look at the live tab though, damn, okay. With the introductions out of the way, let's go back and start from the beginning. On day one, people were mainly interested in using the easiest animatronics to achieve high scores. This was pretty easy to do since some of the characters are just way more obnoxious than others. After just a few hours into his first UCN stream, Dago was already aiming for a 6,000 point run utilizing this setup. This is a pretty good starting point to pave a path to 50-20, as many of these animatronics just kinda do the same thing, or are just generally very easy. On the other hand, most of the animatronics that are absent are some of the most difficult to deal with. And as you'll come to find out in this video, the difficulty curve as you add more characters doesn't really look like this.
No,
it's more like this.
Sí.
Nevertheless, he did manage to pull through in the end and ended his stream with a 6,000 point high score. He spent the end of the stream trying his hand at 50-20 mode, and what did he have to show for it by the end?
Oye, 29 segundos.
29 seconds. Yeah, this is gonna take a while. DJ Surf was also able to get 6,000 points on his first day. Unfortunately, his 50-20 mode attempts went a little worse than Dako's, with him getting 28 seconds and not 29.
Oh, I hit it!
I recognize you.
Yeah. Y Remedy, pues, ni un carajo.
A few days would go by, and by June 30th, Dako and DJ Surf successfully cleared 40-20 and 41-20 mode respectively.
Uf.
Yes!
Se cae.
You may have noticed that I've yet to mention Mary, and that's because her first stream wasn't until 2 days after the game's release on the 29th. But just because she wasn't streaming doesn't mean she wasn't playing.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Please. Yes! Yes! Holy shit! Oh, Dalko, I'm going for your high score. I'm going to beat you. Maybe.
By the time the 30th rolled around, she was sitting at a score of 7,400, with more than 10 hours of playtime on stream alone.
Holy moly.
Although she was lagging behind the other contenders in terms of score, she was still definitely putting in the work. If we take a closer look at DJ Surf's completion, thanks to a screw up with his Blue Yeti, we actually get to see some text that goes in depth into the strategy that he was using at the time, since he didn't get to talk out loud. Once you get into the really hard stuff of UCN, you start to realize that the beginning of the night is kind of the hardest part. You have to set up a bunch of stuff right away, like the audio lures, and the ducks, the snare, and the vents, the wet floor sign, and more intricate stuff involving systems like the power generator and cycles that you have to keep track of in your head. It's ridiculous. He also cites a strategy from a user named SonicYay2 that involves the door and vent animatronics, which I partially described earlier. Office stalling. Basically, most characters can't actually attack you while you're in the office until some kind of disturbance is made, be it the ventilation making your vision go dark or the camera being flipped. So time spent in the office is generally much safer. And cam stalling happens when you're watching certain animatronics on the cameras, but they can't actually move because you're actively looking at them. Let's use Rockstar Chica as an example. She doesn't enter on whatever side the wet floor sign is on, right? So if you were to select the camera watching the opposite hall, it would literally be impossible for her to get in because you're either actively watching her, cam stalling, or in the office so she can't attack, office stalling. These two strategies would be integral in developing a working method for beating 50-20 mode, and they'd basically be the basis of every route going forward. 50-20 mode was finally seeming a little more doable. Going into the next month, July 2nd marked an important day for the quest to beat 50-20 mode. Dago and DJ Surf both broke the 9,000 score barrier, beating 46 and 47-20 mode respectively.
Yay! 9,400, 4720. Yay! Yay, I can go eat dinner now.
A key strategy in allowing this completion to happen came the day before from a YouTuber by the name of Fast Dasher. He posted a video showcasing a way to avoid paying 20 fast coins for each of the prize corner plush animatronics. If you put your camera onto cam 2 within a 20-second time frame after their arrival and keep it there until the next plush animatronic spawns, the game will delete the previous plush animatronic since its time is done and replace it entirely, therefore rendering the problem void. This worked wonders for DJ Sturf's 4720 completion, and by this point everyone was starting to get a hang of the cycles and patterns you needed to use to manage characters and resources like the power and temperature. Surely the completion of 50-20 mode was just around the corner, but that couldn't be further from the truth. There's a problem with the strategy that Fast Dasher came up with, and it's that having other characters that require attention on the cameras would make this exceedingly difficult to pull off. As soon as you leave cam 2 while doing this cam stalling strategy, the plushies would just kill you because you'd no longer be stalling. And thus, we arrive at the big roadblock that needs to be passed in order for a completion of 50-20 mode to even happen. These three motherfuckers. These last three animatronics exponentially increase the difficulty of the game if added, as it forces you to check the cameras at random intervals and a lot more often than would be ideal. They don't just ruin the plushy cam stall strat, they make everything harder.
I don't know. Those last three... I don't know. Anyway.
The next day, DJ Sturf concluded that Foxy would be the best one to add to the mix, as it would allow him to continue using the cam stalling strat for the plush animatronics. Unfortunately, Foxy adds a massive RNG aspect to the run, since he basically has a random chance to progress further every time you flip the camera. This means that adding the other two animatronics, which both involve even more usage of the cameras, would just further exacerbate the problem Foxy causes.
It really seems ultra random with Foxy whether Foxy will actually jump or not. The obvious elephant.
Yo le tenía mucha fe a DJ Sturf.
The last two. You gotta pull away from cam 2 to go to Funtime Foxy. You gotta play that game with Toy Freddy.
In the description, DJ Sturf describes how he's played for over 22 hours since the game has released, and that it's been a very stressful 22 hours. As July 4th rolled around, Dago was also putting in a lot of hours trying to beat 48-20 mode, with his streams already adding up to over 30 hours of playtime. Instead of going for Foxy, he decided to add Toy Freddy instead. People pretty quickly realized that it was more viable for Toy Freddy to leave your fate up to chance than to check his camera all the time, but this obviously introduced another major aspect of RNG, because how quickly Toy Freddy lost was RNG, and how quickly he would try to kill you was also RNG. You could office stall him, but every time you flipped the camera up to reset the ventilation or do anything else, you'd basically just risk a chance of dying to either Foxy or Toy Freddy. It was really annoying.
I didn't put Foxy on because he was being a meanie tonight. I do feel like it's possible though.
Well, looks like Doggo beat 4820 mode. He was only an hour and a half into his stream, so he decided that logically the next step was for him to go straight to 4920 mode, leaving out Funtime Foxy and finally getting to the penultimate step of this massive journey. And how did that turn out for him?
Ese mismo stream. Oh.
That's what you get for leaving me hanging.
Es posible. Oh shit.
Now, in the meantime, you might have noticed that Rameri kinda hasn't been present for a while. What was going on with her during all this? Well, she was struggling a little bit. A few days earlier, on July 2nd, she was still stuck under 8,000 points whilst everyone else was aiming for 9,000. She was desperately trying to beat her high score of 7,800 with no luck. I'm not sure how much she was paying attention to the other competition during this grind, but either way, I imagine that this would have been a pretty discouraging rut to get in. But did she let it stop her though? Absolutely not.
Come on.
9400, ¿verdad? No, eso es demasiada energía.
Yes. Yes.
O 40.000.
Woo!
Vale. Un par.
Yes.
¿Cuánto fue eso?
Yes. 9,000 bitches.
Oh shit. Y aquí fue 9400, ¿no?
Oh. Oh. Oh boy. Yes.
Vale.
It's over 9,000.
Y aquí fue
In
cuando
just
yo
a
sabía que
few
fue-
hours of playtime, Rameri had managed to boost her score to 9,400, closing the gap between the competition.
Uf.
The next day, July 5th, Doggo and DJ Sturf would both complete 4920 mode, with Rameri actively attempting to skip from 9,400 to 9,800 points to match her competitors.
Yes.
I've done it, boys. I've done it. I've freaking done it. I freaking did it!
For 920.
I freaking did it!
Let's see. First, there's an introductory
3% nada mal.
that I'm supposed to read.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Final cutscene coming up, guys. Thank you so much for watching the stream. Wow, just thank you, Lord.
Everyone was having a really hard time dealing with the added RNG that came from Foxy, but everyone universally agreed that Funtime Foxy was the most annoying final animatronic to add, so they just had to suck it up. Except, they didn't.
Yeah.
Earlier, I brought up the really interesting thing that you can buy from the prize corner, the Death Coin. The Death Coin can only be used on certain characters, but thankfully it works on Funtime Foxy. By doing this, you can continue to keep camera usage to a minimum and still use the plush animatronic cam stalling strat. Obviously, the elephant in the room is still Toy Freddy and Foxy. Toy Freddy can basically be ignored. Once Toy Freddy actually loses, he gets angered and has a 10% chance on every 0.5 second interval to attack once the monitor is flipped.
Eso parece como 80%.
This, combined with a number of other factors such as Foxy's progression, is the reason why the cameras are used so sparingly in higher difficulty challenges within UCN. This strategy is what allowed a 50-20 mode completion to go from a pipe dream to an actual, tangible possibility. Keeping all of this in mind, I want to show you all something interesting that happened to Doggo that day. About an hour after he completed 4920 mode, he was already going all in on 5020 mode attempts. It was the beginning of the end. Nearly 4 hours into his stream, he got on this run.
Wow, 4 AM.
Four AM. Good job. 4 AM, boys. 2 more hours, and we've done it. I never thought I'd get that far. I'll be honest.
Sí. Era cosa de rendirse
On
en ese
July
momento.
6th,
Sí,
Rameri
estaba
played
bien,
on
al
stream
igual
for
que
over
en el
11
día.
hours, beating 4920 mode and finally joining everyone else in the grind for 5020. Doggo was having a bit of a hard time, and I honestly don't blame him. At this point, Remary and Daco had both put over 40 hours into streaming the game, with DJ Sturf putting in almost 30.
Four seconds off 5 AM.
DJ Sturf really couldn't afford to be putting so much time into this stressful endeavor, which is why on July 7th he decided to take a break for his health, and thank God that he did.
Ultimate Custom Night, I'm planning to go back and beat 50-20 mode. I think it's doable, I think I can do it, I'm very confident that I could do it. However, I need to be at or near 100% health to be able to do that. You know, prioritize your health over a video game that can be completed later. That's much more important. Take care of yourself. And again, it's been 26 to 27 hours of just non-stop stress in the game, and then strategizing, thinking, what can I sub out, everything. It's been crazy, but it's been fun. I'm gonna look back on this and look back and be like, it was pretty fun. So, all right, I'll check you next time. The end.
In other news, Remary had managed to get to 5 AM on 50-20 mode, 2 hours and 39 minutes into their stream.
Wait. I beat Daco. Oh my god. I have higher high score than Daco. Oh
shit.
Daco was able to beat her right back though, getting further into 5 AM with a 409.3.
I'll take that. 20 seconds away from beating it.
I'm not sure if these streams were happening simultaneously, but this back and forth was definitely still crazy, and it marked the final steps towards the goal of defeating 50-20 mode. Daco was definitely nearing his wit's end though, as after 4 hours straight of playing this agonizingly difficult challenge, he just couldn't continue.
I'm done, boys. Sorry. I can't do it. We'll try again tomorrow. If I wake up and somebody random beats it, congratulations. Take care, guys. Lots of love. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna go die now. Bye.
And with that, Daco's stream ended. But Remary's did not.
¿Qué fue el de las 11 horas? 12
Her
horas.
stream went for nearly 12 hours. Although she was only able to get to 5 AM a handful of times, she didn't let that stop her. For some reason, the VOD on YouTube gets cut off at the end, so the stream was probably actually longer than 12 hours and the VOD just cuts off at that point for some reason. And her next stream starts with her having a higher personal best of 416.3, less than 15 seconds away from beating 50-20 mode. Nevertheless, eventually, this stream did end, and thus July 8th rolled around. Daco was nowhere to be seen, and neither was DJ Sturf. Remary was a mere 13.7 seconds away from glory, and now nobody was there to stop her. Once more, she went live. Was this it? Was this the end?
Why the music was? No! What? Why the... Why?
No.
Oh my god!
1.34.
God damn it.
Qué estrés. 4 horas, diablo.
Why?
5 horas. 5 horas y media, diablo. Faltaba un flip ahí, 6 horas. 6 horas 22.
No! No!
7 horas. He's 2.2 seconds away. ya. 1:30. Attempts later. 2 intentos después. Qué consistente, hombre. Oh, no. Oh my god. Vamos, tú puedes. Vamos.
Oh my god!
Save! Let's fucking go!
Holy shit!
Yes.
Oh my god! No!
Por fin se hizo. Wow.
Oh my god! No! Oh my god!
Yes.
After 63 hours, 46 minutes, and 12 seconds of streaming, 50/20 mode in Five Nights at Freddy's Ultimate Custom Night was finally conquered by Remary. And of course, let's not forget about our runner-ups who also put in a tremendous amount of work to realize their goal. On July 12th, both DJ Sturf and Daco, having taken small breaks away from the stress, also successfully completed 50/20 mode.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Lord. Okay, so that's... And that's not even gonna give me the music. It's not even gonna give me the music. Wow.
Aquí viene.
Nightmare is over.
Aquí viene.
Oh man. Prayers for me through this time have been appreciated as well, and also for Daco. I mean, he's been going through such stress. I'm hoping that he's taking a break now and taking the rest that I took, but you know, after the fact. I don't think I could have pushed in all wisdom to get this first. I would have sent myself to the hospital, so again, I think I made the right decision. So anyway, that's it. Check it next time. Peace, God bless you, stay tuned, and thank you so much for staying tuned. It means a lot. You're valuable as a person. God bless you.
Por ahí viene. Lo que todos estábamos esperando.
Oh my god! You're kidding me! Well, this is a weird situation we're in right now, guys, because I didn't even think I was ever going to be able to beat 50/20 mode, ever. And you can see my reaction to beating it. That's the first time ever I have been that emotional to beating a challenge or anything, ever. I love you all to pieces, and take care of yourselves. Thank you for experiencing this with me. It's been a hell of a ride, and it's been worth it. Take care, everybody. Lots of love, and I'll see you
Love you, Daco.
Following the 3 original victors, countless more would beat 50/20 in their wake, with Scott personally compiling a list of the first 20 victors on a Steam forum.
You know, Argon Matrix.
Wait a second.
No.
What?
Perfecting 50/20.
Even though the original journey to beat 50/20 mode was over, you couldn't really describe it as being perfected, right?
Nope.
After all, no matter how hard it was still easy enough that people could add arbitrary rules to make it even harder. And for the rest of the video, I'm gonna talk about the ways that people did just that. While Remary and the others were busy relishing in the glory of having beaten 50/20 mode, Argon Matrix was going for an even harder challenge, 50/20 with no death coin. A very particular strategy was required in order to solve the obvious issues Funtime Foxy being present would present. First of all, you needed to make sure your ventilation resets were lined with every in-game hour so that you could check cameras during showtimes.
Me di cuenta que Argon Matrix utiliza exactamente la misma estrategia que yo utilizo de la Global Music Box. Todo lo que él hace, lo hace exactamente como yo lo hago con mi estrategia de la Music Box, lo cual para mí es insano.
You need to hope that you get a 1 AM first showtime so you can cam-stall the first plushie, and you'd have to grind for fast coins to purchase the 3 AM plushie. Then you'd have to pray that you get a 4 AM second showtime so that you don't have to use the cameras at all past 5 to actually win. This strategy also relies on the admittedly possible chance that Zor doesn't spawn to summon the other 6 animatronics before 41 seconds, because if she doesn't, then Plushtrap will kill you before you even have time to do the route. All of this, of course, is on top of everything else that has to be dealt with in 50-20 mode. Needless to say, this is much harder than 50-20 with a death coin, and adds even more RNG. To put into perspective just how much more ridiculous it was, it took Argon 97 hours of playtime to achieve the feat, and he had died at 4:22 before beating it. Years later, True Player would invent an alternative strategy for no death coin that lessened the RNG factor, and to this day, it's the more widely used method. If you were to instead farm for fast coins starting from the very beginning, you could
mouse y keyboard bueno, utiliza Xbox, pero why? Like Ethan, why?
Purchase both of the plushies you needed instead of just one. This would allow you to stay on Funtime Foxy's camera reliably throughout the first half of the night, and it honestly isn't that hard to do because there's a lot of interactions in the game that give you fast coins. The most important detail in letting this work is to never pay Rockstar Freddy fast coins and to always use the heater for him. That way you won't have to waste any of the coins you were collecting. Another player named Gumball, or Gumball V, I'm not sure, was the first person to beat no death coin while buying all 3 plushies, 2.5 years after the game's release. Funnily enough, the strategy isn't actually too different from what I previously described. The only difference is that you farm for more fast coins and buy all 3 plushies instead of just 2. The next thing that I briefly want to mention is sort of a last-minute addition that I found while editing, but I thought it was really interesting. Basically, a player named Brayden was able to beat 50-20 mode with no death coin and no plushies. It involves some strategies that I haven't quite talked about yet, but will elaborate on in the near future. Beating the game in this way was assumed to be impossible for a pretty long time, but it's thanks to a player named CamUCN, who I'm gonna mention a few times, they're actually quite important, that sentiment was proven incorrect. It involves getting a 3 AM and 6 AM showtime for Funtime Foxy, and at 2:15 you need to switch off of Cam 2 for exactly 1 frame as 3 AM rolls around to check Funtime Foxy, and for some reason the game just doesn't end up killing you to the plushie if it's done on the exact frame. For the rest of it, you're going to be office stalling or cam stalling both of them, the plushies and Funtime Foxy, so it ends up working out even without a death coin. There's one more challenge that I want to talk about in this general category that I think really pushes the limits of the game. It was arguably one of the most difficult possible things to do in Ultimate Custom Night. 50-20 mode, no death coin, no exploits, done by none other than True Player. So, what do we define as an exploit? Well, you remember at the beginning of the video when I described office stalling and cam stalling as being the backbone of 50-20 strategies? Well, throw them both out the fucking window because they're not allowed anymore. This basically means that everyone is attacking all the time. This challenge is so hard that in the description, he describes it as easily the hardest official FNAF Max mode known to man, and is by far the hardest video game challenge I have ever completed in my entire life. And that's coming from someone who has beaten 50-20 mode using various different methods and restrictions probably well over 100 times, if I had to guess. There is no way for me to describe how insanely difficult this feat is. True Player is no doubt one of the best FNAF players of all time. There's a lot of other miscellaneous 50-20 mode runs that exist, like beating it 9 times in a row, beating it with no sound, beating it at 175% speed, beating it with all plushies, no death coin, and no power generator. Jesus. Okay, but the list goes on. There's a whole other category of challenge that people love to do in basically every Five Nights at Freddy's game, though. Green runs. I briefly mentioned it earlier, but a green run is essentially just trying to beat a certain night or challenge with as much power left as possible. you have to further optimize your gameplay for what already needed to be pretty optimized because it's 50-20 mode. I talked about all manner of green runs in my previous custom night videos, but none of these green runs were nearly as insane as the ones in Ultimate Custom Night. I mean, how much power could you possibly beat 50-20 mode with? Well, let's find out. The first known Ultimate Custom Night green run for 50-20 mode is Gunball's 26% run from October 17th, 2020.
¿Ese es Gumball? Que nunca lo había visto en mi vida.
About half a week after this run, the familiar DJ Sturf accomplished a 30% green run on the 22nd. A lot of the power in 50-20 mode was wasted shining the flashlight at Phantom Freddy, who you obviously wouldn't want jump scaring you since doing that would force an animatronic that was being office stalled into the room. At least, that's what people thought. It turns out, when Phantom Freddy jump scares you, he won't show up again for a pretty long time. So naturally, if you were to just close the necessary doors the instant before he briefly incapacitates you, you'd save a lot of power you'd otherwise burn beaming him with your flashlight.
And I got 30! Yes! Yes, yeah, ha 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 ha! 30%! No power-ups, 30%, that is so nuts, oh man.
With some minor optimizations, such as not fumbling with Toy Freddy at the beginning, he was able to further improve his own record up to 32%.
32! Okay! Alright. Oh man, okay, that's nice. 32, that was a pretty good run. That was a pretty good run.
Well, that run was pretty solid. I bet nobody's beating it by much anytime soon. Alright, it's finally time for the part of the video where I talk about Shooter25, one of the best FNAF players of all time. The day after DJ Sturf's solid 32% run, he improved the record by a whole 6%. How was such a massive improvement made so quickly? Well, DJ Sturf spent a really long time in the cameras, whereas Shooter went through them pretty quickly, especially at the beginning. This resulted in him getting the necessary fast coins for the death coin through forced door interactions and not as much through finding them in the cameras like Sturf did. These tiny optimizations are the key thing that separated Shooter25 and DJ Sturf. And you know the funniest part? Shooter beat himself by 2% the next day. What a fucking maniac. Next you're gonna tell me he used a completely different route to save 20% more power. Yeah, so in reply to one of the comments under his 40% run, Shooter was like, oh yeah, death coining the puppet would probably work pretty well. Oh, well, I don't really know how to deal with Funtime Foxy without death coining him. Well, he didn't say all that exactly, but he did get to thinking, what would happen if he used the death coin on the puppet instead? Well, the global music box, the main source of power drainage in 50-20, now only needed to be used for Chica. This means that you could not only avoid actively draining power, but you could actively prevent power from going down by using the power generator more. If you use the same strategy from the no death coin route that involves timing your ventilation resets with Funtime Foxy, then you can successfully pull off this route. It's honestly no wonder he was able to save 20% from the previous run alone with this crazy new route change. However, the challenge wasn't to be underestimated. In the description, he talks about how getting a run this good took him over 60 hours, which is basically how long it took Romeri to beat 50-20 mode at all. Around this time, another new strategy called the zero frame camera flip was also introduced. For some reason, if you open the camera on the same frame that you close it, every action in the game that would happen had you opened the camera as intended would happen, except for Foxy and Bonnie figures switching on the desk. So you can use this trick to change which one is on the desk, which can slow Foxy's progress dramatically and reduce overall RNG, whilst also saving a bit of power. In order to improve this even further, it would take Shooter another 67 hours of playtime to achieve another massive jump to 71%. The reason for this was thanks to a lot of new minor optimizations coming together. For example, a new strategy involving Lefty was discovered by a player named Nephrite. I wouldn't blame you for forgetting what Lefty does by this point in the video since we haven't really seen him doing much. So he has that irritation stat that goes up progressively the more noise and heat is bothering him, and you can probably tell why this would be an issue, since managing those two resources takes power. What Nephrite discovered, though, was that Lefty could only kill you on every 1 second interval. So instead of using one long camera flip to buy a plushie, multiple short flips could be used instead to minimize RNG deaths by avoiding the lethal intervals. And thankfully this also helps in saving a bit of power. The record was taken by Spondos a month later, raising it by 1% to a new record of 72. It seemed like Shooter was disinterested in taking it back because he waited 5 months to do attempts again, and it only took him 3 days for him to improve it up to 74% once he actually started trying. Between his 71 and 74% runs, a new strategy for...
Ay, qué mierda de thumbnail. Era un PNG de Puppet, era como todo negro, pero estaba como bien mal. Tenía el efecto de chroma key, pero estaba tan mal hecho, pero irónicamente se veía cool. Pero todo este texto de aquí, esto es literalmente hecho en KineMaster. Literalmente puse texto de KineMaster en esta mierda de thumbnail y simplemente se lo di. Hasta es como uno de los peores thumbnails que he hecho en toda mi vida. Shooter, si me escuchas, I'm sorry. Esto fue una thumbnail de hace prácticamente 2 años atrás. Really sorry. Bueno, sí.
A new strategy for the beginning of all 50/20 runs called segmented night setup was introduced. If you compare these two runs, you can see that it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. The setup at the beginning is segmented between shorter camera flips that save power as opposed to spending more time on the cameras. In the description, he said that he definitely could have gotten 75%, but getting 80% would require a perfect run and perfect RNG, and is pretty much a completely unrealistic thing to hope for. At this point, everything was so optimized that in order to take it any further, you'd need to really think outside the box and come up with new ways to do things that have been established for a long time. I thought this was the part where it cuts away to a new strategy. Why hasn't it happened yet? On May 9th, 2022, 2 players known as Cam UCN and Ruby discovered a downright ridiculous new strategy. The entire time, we were still using cam stalling for the plushies on Cam 2 and having to click off of that camera during showtimes for Funtime Foxy, which was complicated, and for a long time this seemed like the only possible way of doing things if you weren't deathcoining Funtime Foxy. But in reality, there was a secret third option, the FPI or Frame Perfect Input Strat. Using this strategy, you have to rely on specifically getting a 3 AM first showtime. None of the other ones work. Once 3 AM rolls around, you have to open the cameras and click on Cam 6 on the exact frame that it turns 3 AM, and then press S to close the camera on that same frame. During that time, the first plush animatronic will disappear and the second one will take its place at 3 AM. And simultaneously...
¿Por qué? Pero cada vez que yo hago eso, le doy a la S y nunca funciona. No sé por qué. Me ha pasado 2 veces y esas 2 veces le doy a la S, no cierra las cámaras, y entonces le doy a la W para abrir la ventilación porque pienso que se va a cerrar las cámaras y mango le aparece. Por eso es que tanto la completion como mi muerte del 427 entraron mango. Porque... no sirve, no entiendo por qué me pasaba eso.
You will have fulfilled the showtime requirement by showing up for exactly 1 frame. Afterwards, you then have to switch back to Cam 2 to continue cam stalling the future plush animatronics. If you've done it correctly, then congratulations! You've just made it past the part where over 90% of your runs will die due to the sheer mechanical difficulty of the trick. Even if you do all of that correctly, there's only a 1 in 3 chance of getting a 6 AM showtime, which you need. If that doesn't happen, it's rendered meaningless, and you have to start all over again. Then, even after all of that, you have to switch your camera back to 6 just after 5 AM so that you can office stall Funtime Foxy without having to show up to his showtime at 6 AM. This is the absurd difficulty that Ultimate Custom Night has come to. And using this strategy, Shooter was able to break the final 20% barrier and beat...
No puede ser. Miren. Tengo algo que contarles. Yo estaba en la llamada, pero no me acuerdo qué pasó, pero yo tenía un terrible dolor estomacal. Y literalmente digo, mira, lamento, me tengo que ir, me voy a ir a dormir. Literalmente lo que hice fue comerme un guineo, en este caso una banana, en mi país se le dice guineo, y me fui directo a dormir. Y luego al día siguiente me doy cuenta de que en esa misma llamada se completó el 50% con 80%. Yo me cago en nada. Si no hubiese sido por el dolor estomacal, hubiese estado ahí presenciando un momento histórico. Estaba a punto de hacerlo. Y fucking hell.
50-20 mode with 80% power remaining. A truly
porque ahora son una fucking alarma.
A truly amazing feat that even he compared to playing like a task.
¿Por qué la desactivaste?
Yes, I did it! Let's go! I did it! I got everyone! Oh my god, I did it! Oh my god! Oh my god, tell everyone! Tell everyone! Tell everyone! Oh my god! Oh my god! 80 points!
Díselo a mí que me quedé dormido. Qué estupidez.
There was another good player who was up to the task, despite how ridiculously difficult it had become. The YouTuber named Spondos that I mentioned a little earlier, by just being a little bit better all around, was able to push it up by 1% on June 26th, 2022. In July, Spondos theorized that a different route might be better than using FPI at 3 AM, but for a reason he doesn't even know himself, he waited over a year to actually try executing it. During this period, UCN pros got their hands on the source code of the game, which allowed them to understand it even more than they already did. Fast forwarding to October 2023, Spondos would start attempting his new route and strategy. It's similar to FPI, but utilizes 2 and 5 AM showtimes rather than 3 and 6. The reason why this is better is because 3 and 6 AM showtimes involve keeping Lefty satiated for an extra hour, and Spondos realized that this really wasn't necessary. It utilizes a different type of frame-perfect input, where rather than clicking off of Cam 2 to Cam 6 on the exact frame of the showtime, you instead click on Cam 6 on the exact frame you close the camera at around 3 minutes and 44 seconds. Normally clicking off of Cam 2 at this interval would kill you because you're no longer cam stalling, but because you exit the camera on the same frame you leave Cam 2, the game just doesn't punish you. Since the ventilation reset happens slightly before the trick is performed, you can close the camera while on Cam 6, which allows you to office stall both the plush animatronic and Funtime Foxy for the remainder of the night.
81, ¿no? Ah, no, 83. Sí, esta fue el stream que me perdí. Yo fui a su stream cuando consiguió un 82 y él decía que estaba súper decepcionado porque quería un 83. Y luego el siguiente día ya terminó un stream que había empezado que ni me di cuenta y luego se hizo 83 hacia los random y estaba como que... the fuck?
Now I know a few of you started thinking earlier after I mentioned Shooter's task comment. What would a task green run look like? Well, guess what? Shooter went ahead and made one, and it is insane. For the uninitiated, TASK stands for Tool Assisted Speedrun. In this instance, it's not really a speedrun, so maybe TAG is more appropriate. Basically, it allows for the manipulation of RNG and the ability to place inputs with frame-precise accuracy or just slow down your own gameplay tremendously to painstakingly create a theoretically perfect version of gameplay. You want to know a fun fact? There are a lot of characters in this game that just don't do anything to you given you have perfect RNG. Some characters don't spawn at all. Do you remember Rockstar Foxy and his bird? Yeah, with perfect RNG, you can just get mini buffs throughout the night that save you even more power. Soundproof is the one that's chosen specifically so you can make as much noise with the power generator without making Music Man upset as you want. Oh, what about Lefty, you might be wondering. Guess what? With perfect RNG, he doesn't care what you do. You could throw him into a blast furnace and play an air horn into his ear and nothing would happen as long as you were having an exceptionally lucky day. You want to know what else happens in this task? Zor doesn't spawn at all. Which means in turn, the other 6 bonus animatronics don't spawn either. The chances of this happening are 1 in 131,072.
Bro, what?
The final power value, 1072.
0.000779394533125%, by the way. What the fuck?
The final power value is 98.04%, which means only 1.96% power was lost for the entire night. And that, my friends, is perfection.
Is perfection.
But it isn't human perfection.
No.
It's just a task. All this time we've been talking about Ultimate Custom Night, but in reality, this game is not nearly as hard as it could be. I feel like I've made that pretty clear with how many of these ridiculous challenges people have managed to do. There is a website, though, a compiled list of the hardest challenges that the FNAF community has to offer, known as the Max Mode List. On this Max Mode list, the original base 5020 mode is placed as the 73rd hardest challenge. 73rd. What lies at the pinnacle of this list? What is so much harder than 5020 mode that it's 73 places above it? What is perfection? Allow me to introduce to you Ultimate Custom Night Deluxe. Ultimate Custom Night Deluxe is a fan mod of
No, porque entre todos los videos que pudo poner puso la peor actualización. Why?
Ultimate Custom Night created by Nephrite, who I mentioned earlier, and it's not the only mod that exists for high-level UCN players, but it's the one that I want to give the special focus to here. The goal of the mod is to rework the game into a form that takes relative difficulty and community input into account, as well as removing all exploits that weren't intended by Scott Cawthon, like stalling. The puppet needs to be manually wound, every plushie needs to be bought, the night length was increased to 6 minutes, and, in general, many characters that were previously pushovers or easily cheesed have been corrected, and overall, the game has been made so difficult that even beating the normal 50-20 on this is significantly harder than no death coin, no exploits in the original. Of course, that didn't stop people from beating it anyways. People did green runs, and people even beat that with no death coin, which is currently the 4th hardest challenge on the max mode list. But if UCN Deluxe no death coin sits at number 4, then that begs the question, what's number 1? Well, to answer that question, you need to understand that no matter how hard something is, it's usually not hard enough for at least one person. So an entirely new challenge was created. Harder than 50-20, harder than no death coin, harder than no exploits, harder than anything the Five Nights at Freddy's community had ever seen before. Hopeless Pursuit. A super buffed version of Deluxe's 50-20 no death coin. You might remember me mentioning the player Cam UCN a few times in the video, who helped to discover the FPI strat along with Ruby. She was going to try and beat Hopeless Pursuit. She was going to try to beat the hardest challenge in FNAF history.
Me tomó como varios meses. Esta fue súper loca porque ella intentó hacer 50-20 Deluxe y murió exactamente a las 6 de la mañana. Yo creo que fue por Yaco Chica o algo así bien estúpido. Y ella dijo, fuck it, me completé 50-20 Deluxe, me voy a verificar el top 1 y se pasó a Hopeless Pursuit. Eso es probablemente la cosa más estúpida que yo he visto en toda una completion de una Maximum Edge como tal en cuanto a la historia detrás de. Es insano. Es que mírate eso. Estar cerrando puertas simulator, pero al mismo tiempo no debes de cometer ni un solo error. Puedes cometer varios, pero son sumamente mínimo el error. Es estúpida. Yo no me veo capaz de lograr esto. Ya de por sí soy muy malo enfocándome en todo tipo de personajes al mismo tiempo.
I fucking.
Oh my god,
shit.
fuck him. Fuck him.
Oh my fucking god.
15,000. Mírate ese trofeo es hermoso. Super beautiful.
All of the hours put in by countless people over 5 years led to this one victorious moment. All of the innovations, the different strategies, and tiny, seemingly insignificant optimizations stacked for years from countless people, all with the same goal to master one game, have finally been realized. I think this is as close to perfect as we're gonna get for a long while. This has been the quest to perfect Ultimate Custom Night. I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time.
Wow. Yes. Qué buen video. Lo estaba esperando todo este mes. Bueno, básicamente todo este año. Obviamente voy a dejar mi comentario, porque voy a poner I love you y le voy a poner un corazón. Bueno, esa ha sido mi reacción a todo este video. Me sorprende que no haya puesto como que haya llegado a un punto en el que literalmente toda la comunidad de nosotros estábamos tan apegados con UCN que estábamos con eso de 50-20, pero Deathcoin cualquier personaje es. Pero luego me pongo a pensar y realmente es como que súper innecesario. Voy a dejar el link del video original en la descripción. También le voy a dejar el link del youtuber quien subió esto, el cual es Minoxa. Es un excelente youtuber, adoro a esta persona, la manera en que introduce cualquier tipo de tema y todos sus videos en general me encantan. Pues nada, voy a dejar el video hasta aquí porque si sigo acumulando minutos literalmente mi teléfono va a explotar. Así que de modo, voy a dejarlo hasta ahí. Así que espero que les haya gustado. No sé si este va a ser el último video del año, pero nada, ¿qué se lo va a hacer? Así que nada, nos vemos. Chao.